they're exposed to are in the school setting. And in second grade, they don't have a lot of access to the computers. It's through specials, which at one particular school, it's 25 minutes every sixth day that second graders get to go and be on a Chromebook that is going to be just the computer that they're going to be taking that state mandated test the next year. And they told me that they have some computers in the classroom that have to be shared, but then there's the access issue for a lot of the kids. So what happens is that our schools that serve low-income neighborhoods, the kids are put at a disadvantage when they're going and doing state-mandated testing. They haven't had as much experience as higher income neighborhoods and schools have had. So I'm incredibly supportive of this. In fact, the teachers that I talked to, one was a kindergarten teacher, said, I wish that we could have Chromebooks in kindergarten. She said, I guess I'm asking for too much, but we would be really happy if we could have them in second grade to prepare our kids for those tests at the very minimum. And then there's all the wonderful stuff with the spelling and reading practice and everything. And I was somewhat startled with the commentary this evening. I do think that things can slip through. And I also know, because I've had a son who's now 17 who was fortunate to be in some of the schools that kind of piloted some of this stuff early on, that you get a clever kid and sometimes they find an end run about just about anything, and mine would be one of them. And so, you know, I hate for that to happen, and it is a serious issue. I'm glad that we're going to look at closer to see if there's some other things that we can do, but we can't prevent everything.
Thanks, Barb. Kathy?
When we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, I had a contact from a parent or two, and it was parents who were in the rotation but don't have a one-to-one. And I remember asking Steve and Kirk to explain to me, how do you do this rotation and somebody go all the way through middle school and not ever experience that one-to-one? Well, they'll get it in ninth grade. But I think it would help if Kirk would come and give that same explanation on that rotation for the parents who were really concerned about this. Even though they saw it in writing, somebody else may have that question. Because when you say one-to-one and everybody's got it, and after 3 years, and then you have a president, but I don't. Well, somebody's first and somebody's last. And so I'd rather Kirk use it because he was explained it much better than I can.
So when we rolled out the plan and rolled up the plan, one of the things that was a decided driving force was to make sure that in all cases we did it so that our purpose was to support curriculum, to support instruction. And we started at sixth grade, you might recall last year, because sixth grade was a confluence or a point where we had the K-6 reading curriculum, which could be delivered digitally, with the rollout of a new math curriculum, which is exclusively digital. Those both intersected at grade 6. So reading, writing, and arithmetic, if you will, all were digital or digital ready. So it made sense to start there to, again, directly support. Mid-year, we went in grades 3, 4, 5 because that K-6 reading curriculum that can be delivered digitally, we created that demand a number of years ago for more devices, and it was our opportunity mid-year to fulfill that demand. So that provided for that. And then we've been rolling out now, in this year, we got another round of sixth graders. So if you were a seventh grader last year, you watched the sixth graders last year get a Chromebook. Those sixth graders, or those that were sixth graders and are seventh graders this year, they picked up the one that they got last year, and the sixth graders picked up a Chromebook. I'm now an eighth grader. I've watched the sixth graders get them twice, and I don't have one yet. You couldn't have been in a worse place than being a seventh grader in the first year that they were rolled out, because you watched people beneath you each year. As a ninth grader, you'll come into Chromebooks no matter what, because we already have them at 2 of the high schools, and the other 4 high schools will have them next year as well. So there's no way that you won't get that. And I remember responding to one of the parents, and I said, my daughter, who is at one of the high schools that didn't get them, remarked to me, well, if I was at another high school, I already would have, and I was only 1 year late if I would have been at a pilot middle school. So she has, in a sense, watched a very similar sort of thing. That's the nature of rolling them out in the way that we did. I think the key here, and the really important one, is that we endeavored in all of this to make sure that what we were doing was directly supporting instruction and supporting the curriculum. And so in so doing, yeah, there's no doubt that somebody could find themselves as being in the third year rather than in the first. Those are the vagaries of doing it the way that we did.
And so for the parents that might feel like, well, how come my kid doesn't have one? Instructionally, they have access to all kinds of technology still within the building. We still have computer labs or technology labs in those buildings. So eighth graders who don't have a personally assigned Chromebook have access to technology during the school day.
Yes, they do, and in fact, that's one of the benefits of having at least 2 of the classes in a middle school. It immediately takes some of the load off of those labs where teachers were booking it. The 6th and 7th grade teachers are not at that point, so at least with the frequency, unless they're doing something that directly requires it. So it gives more access to the 8th graders to utilize the existing resources.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Annie?
I want to thank staff for responding to our request for some data, some evidence, some what's been written about the research. I mean, I was kind of aware that, well, just like you said, timing is everything, and like if you're an 8th grader now, I'm very sorry type of thing. But it's also like we're really, in looking through the materials and actually other materials that I mean, there's not a lot out there telling us exactly what to do here. So we really are kind of trying to figure out what to do here. But I'm feeling very confident that we are going in the right direction, because one thing that we do see over and over again is that if we're going to deal with the achievement gap, technology is the direction in which that can help us with that. And so in following in what Barb is saying, we hear this over and over, then we just kind of need to keep knowing that what we're doing is not just putting technology in our kids' hands, but we're dealing with a lot of the issues. And I think another thing that came out in a lot of the readings was it's not the technology, it is the educator who is using the tool, and that needing to continue to support our educators in how to best use this tool. And that is, I think we're on top of that too. So I firmly just think that we have what we need to say this is a good thing to go forward on.
Other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion on the floor. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Boswell.
Yes.
Mrs. Danick.
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan.
Yes.
Ms. Mumgarde.
Yes.
Mr. Schulte.
Yes.
Ms. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes. Next, that takes us to item 10.1.3, Policy 1500, Community Relations, Relations between area, state, regional, and national associations of schools. Barb?
Yes. I will hand this over to John Neal.
Would we want to start with a motion?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I've been away for a few weeks, so I'm out of practice here. Yes, I so move to approve 10.1.3 as printed in our board book.
Matt, I saw your hand up.
Yep, I'll second that.
Thank you. And then did you have a comment?
No.
You're aiming for the second? Kathy?
Out of an abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on Policy 1500 as part of the agenda, item 10.1.3.
Connie?
Out of abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on Policy 1500 as part of agenda item 10.1.3.
Lanny?
Out of an abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on Policy 1500 as part of Agenda Item 10.1.3.
Anybody left? All right.
Hope not.
Other comments on this policy item? All right, seeing none. Laura, would you please call? Oh, wait.
I'm sorry. So this was part of our group last time. We've got a lot of people abstaining on it. Is anybody willing to comment why we're going to see just 4 of us vote on this?
Kathy?
The 3 of us are on the Nebraska Association of School Boards, and this demands that we all be part of it. And because
Okay.
it's a payment to the school boards that we're part of, as directors appointed by the school district, serving out our
Right.
position here, and Lanny happens to be an incoming officer, or the existing,
President.
president-elect. He'll be president next year. So that's the reason that you abstain, because you don't vote for something that might benefit yourself.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks for clarifying that.
That's the specific answer. Then the general answer is that because we bend over backwards to avoid even the appearance of any
Yeah.
kind of a conflict.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? All right, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Ms. Mumgarde,
You abstain.
Abstain.
Ms. Mumgarde,
Yes.
Mr. Schulte,
Yes.
Ms. Byer,
Yes,
Mr. Boswell,
I abstain.
Mrs. Danick,
I abstain.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes. Okay. Next, that brings us to item 10.2.1, the State 21st Century Community Learning Center Continuation Grant Application. Kathy?
I would move approval.
Thank you. Lanny?
Second?
Connie, did you have a comment?
Nope, I was just going to do second.
Matt?
I mentioned at the last school board meeting that I was volunteering at Kohler CLC. The organization I run has a club there. I remember I tore my shirt playing basketball. So I'm going to, out of abundance of caution, hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on this item.
Any other comments on this one? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Mumgarde,
Yes.
Mr. Schulte,
Abstain.
Ms. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Boswell,
Yes.
Mrs. Danick,
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan,
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew.
Yes. Next, that takes us all the way down to informational items. We'll start with board committees, and I have a note here that we have an update from the Strategic Planning Committee. Lanny?
We do have an update from the Strategic Planning Committee. We are ready to begin the next phase with the Community Study Group tomorrow night, but before we talk about that, we have a video presentation on the wrap-up of Phase 1.
Hello, my name is Rob McIntyre, and I'm an assessment evaluation specialist with Lincoln Public Schools. I'm here representing the department because we're proud to have participated in the data gathering and analysis of the LPS strategic survey effort. We're here in the LPS Music Library because we wanted to use this visual as a backdrop to help represent what's been done with your comments from the LPS strategic plan survey. We are surrounded by sheet music. We're surrounded by sheet music organized in boxes. Every one of these boxes is organized very carefully with a label and a code because we wanted to make sure that we don't lose any of this really important information. We also wanted to make sure that we treated your comments with respect and to make sure that nothing was lost. So you can rest assured that if you submitted a comment via the online survey, if you went to one of the facilitated discussions and you said something and the recorder wrote down a summary of what you and your group said, every single thing that someone said in one of those two places was very carefully considered, put in a database, given a theme so that we can go back and find out what people said based on certain questions and certain themes for the writers to use when they write the next LPS strategic plan. So what we have is a massive database, which we can think of as a massive resource. Our goal is to look across these massive resources and summarize what the community wants Lincoln Public Schools to do in the next 5, 10, 15 years. It's an ambitious task, but we're grateful to the community for responding so favorably and so enthusiastically, and we promise to treat your comments well and use them in the next strategic plan. Thank you.
I think Rob did an excellent job explaining the steps that have happened since we've wrapped up the last community meeting. Again, tomorrow, 18 people, 9 community members, 9 LPS staff members will start digesting and discussing the information that's been collected. That meeting will be here. The Strategic Planning Committee will be present to observe that so that we can help with future discussions about their discussions. And again, we're deeply grateful to the community for participating in this process. Thousands of responses. We had a chance yesterday to look at some of the data, and you could literally spend hours and hours looking over the information that we have, and we look forward to the next steps.
Outstanding. Thank you for that update. Annie?
There's been so much going on, I kind of forgot we had a committee since the Student Learning Committee. We've covered most of what we did, but I just want to put out there that, again, we're not only looking at the early childhood, but we're going to be taking some time between now and summer and late spring to be able to bring to the board more in-depth kind of information, I guess you could say, of the greater picture of like, where do we stand? Not only with, we were looking at our enrollment update, we were also looking at our, at this last meeting at the student discipline update. So kind of trying to pull together a big picture. I just want, again, if you keep up with our minutes, a big picture of where do we stand and what are our needs going to be. So when we get to that summertime, and we're actually looking at all of this information and the ideas pulled in by the community, we can make some decisions really undergirded by the community's hoping to bring to the larger board. Okay, this is like ways for us to think through a lot of issues from early childhood all the way to when our kids have graduated. Sorry, but I have to admit, we've had a lot of meetings lately, and I kind of forgot that happened within the last 2 weeks.
Thanks, Annie. Other reports from committee chairs? Seeing none. Lanny, is there an update from the Career Academy?
The next meeting of the Career Academy Joint Board will be February 8th.
Thank you. And that brings us to the superintendent's update. Dr. Joel.
So speaking of a lot going on, in front of you is a very, very small token of sincere appreciation on the part of our staff and our district and our community for the hard work that board members put in. This is Board Appreciation Month, School Board Appreciation Month around the country. And, you know, I always think this time of year when we make this presentation to you that if the community knew how much time you put in, not only at a board meeting, which is most visible, and obviously the public sees that, but also behind the scenes on committee work, representing your constituencies, attending events at buildings, and then attending other local events, state events, and national events. I think they'd be beyond impressed. So from many, many people, thank you for your hard work and your commitment, and we're a better district as a result of your resolve and your willingness to really make a difference in the lives of kids. It's a district that's on the move and doing very, very well. Speaking of doing very well, we obviously, you know, we receive a lot of acknowledgments and awards, and we've had some pretty cool things happening nationally. One that wasn't on anybody's radar, but on January 13th, we were named one of 433 districts across the country for distinction of being listed in the 7th annual AP Advanced Placement Honor Roll. And I didn't, admittedly, not know very much about this. I don't know that there's been very much publicity on it, but we've, as part of this group of districts, we've simultaneously increased access to AP coursework while maintaining or increasing the percentage of students earning scores of 3 or higher on AP exams. And that's from data from 2014 to 2016. So, I mean, I think that's pretty good acknowledgement. Again, it's in the scope of things, this might get lost in a shuffle, but they did send some really impressive banners that Laura got today that we're going to be sending down to the high schools for to share in the acknowledgement of that award. So, snow day last week, right? I mean, you all, I'm sure, took emails like I did, but you know, there's always one. Actually, in this case, is a number of funny ones. The one that stuck out in my mind, and it's very, very timely for today's conversation, came from a high school student, and it said this. I have to remember it because I didn't write it down. If you don't care enough about student safety to call school off tomorrow, do it for the safety of the Chromebooks. And I have to tell you, that made my decision right there. I mean, I thought, that investment that we've made in Chromebooks, how could we not call school off? So students got a snow day because of a creative expression. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the Capitol Rotunda, there's going to be a public schools rally. There's going to be a lot of folks, I think, that are going to be interested in putting forward, you know, exactly what public schools, the role we play, and as Mrs. Duncan knows, and I know a lot of other people know, there have been a lot of conversations about that. We don't want to get lost in the shuffle right now with what's happening nationally, and certainly some of the conversation taking place in our state. And we know that you totally agree with that, but we want our community to just be reminded of the role that public education plays in Nebraska and the United States. And then I'll close, and my last item is perhaps a little bit of a downer, but I think it's just an acknowledgement of reality, and that is, you know, what's happening with regard to the state budget. And I've mentioned to you through some updates, seems like that's really all I've been doing the last couple of weeks, is attending 3 or 4 different coalition meetings, trying to make sense out of, you know, what are we facing? What is it, you know, what does it mean for us? the governor made it a topic, the shortfall, the 900 million, we understand, could be over $1 billion by the time the next forecasts are rendered. One's in February and one in April. He spoke highly about tightening the belt. There's many indicators that TIOSA, which is our state aid mechanism formula, is not going to be fully funded for the next couple of years. And revenue reports just really don't look very bright. And most of us know that it's tied into what's happening in the ag sector and the ag economy, and want to know exactly how dependent we are as a state on agriculture. This is it. This is that 900 million, because you look at Lincoln, you look at the Omaha metro area, and you see a lot of growth. And you wonder, well, how can there be that kind of a shortfall? And it's because of that. Well, as a growing school district, we're going to be faced with some tough choices, as we have to, as we always do, establish priorities in our 2017-2018 budget development process. It's not going to be the way it's been the last couple of years. The Finance Committee has a lot of work ahead of them, and our school district, even in a tough financial time, is slated to grow between 800 and 1,000 more students next year. When we look at that shortfall, and we look at this growth that we're seeing, which is nothing short of phenomenal, and we look at our needs, we look at our goals, we have some tough decisions that we have to make going forward. So our challenge is really, how do we maintain and hope to persevere in a climate, an environment that's going to be very, very challenging. And as the Finance Committee Chair, Mrs. Danek, is well versed in this climate, been through a couple of cycles herself, and we just have a lot of work, hard work ahead of us, and we have to embrace that. And we don't want to sugarcoat it. Despite growing 1,000 students, which will serve as a bit of a floor for us, there are some very debilitating bills right now that are being debated that will have an impact on us. So I wanted to be clear about that. I've yet to attend a meeting where there's a rosier forecast. In fact, it seems to be getting a little bit worse each time we sit down and talk, and every district in the state is going to be impacted differently based on enrollment, based on needs, based on growth, all of those factors. We're poised to be in a better position than most, but we also have to be part of supportive coalitions that are looking to resolve, or to come to the table with solutions that will benefit not only our 41,000 students, but the other 200,000 students across the state too, which are very, very important. Concludes my report.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I appreciate you bringing this up, because this has been on my mind quite a bit, and I'd like to say a couple of things about this. In my time on the board, we've seen a lot of different financial situations. We've responded with a lot of different budgets. We have done a lot of work, we talk about it a lot, trying to lower the levy. There have been times that we have crafted budgets where we levied less than what we could have. We've done work at sizing bonds in such a way that it would have a certain effect on the levy. And we've been doing that while dealing with an incredible growth, building new school buildings, and increasing student achievement and the graduation rate to record levels. And that takes a lot of work. One of the strengths, I think, one of the things that we have always done very well as a district in our financial planning, Steve said it's not going to be as bad for us as for some districts. And one of the reasons for that is our approach to dealing with our financial situation, where we have a projection system and we look at sustainability. When we're looking at decisions, it's not just how does it affect us this year, it's also how does it affect us next year and the year after. And that's something that we do that I think is really good, something that we're very strong at. Right now, as Steve was talking about, I think that there is so much uncertainty, especially around our two biggest sources of revenue. We don't know what's going to happen with state aid in the legislature. Don't know what's going to happen with valuations. There's been some talk that there could be some changes in both. It's very difficult, I think, to make any kind of concrete plans with those two big question marks hanging over us. But I think what all this is leading up to, for me, is a request or a directive to the Finance Committee that, again, knowing that we do have these uncertainties out there, I think that it's time, sooner rather than later, for us to be sharpening our pencils and starting to get those conversations going about how are we going to deal with whatever the financial situation ends up being this year. And so that's a request that I'd like to make to the Finance Committee. Kathy?
As finance chair, there are usually two approaches we use. This year, it seems even more imperative. First thing we have to do is put together a budget calendar. That's in our policy, that's how we do our budgeting. We're meeting tomorrow to discuss the budget calendar and get that out for you. But another part of our process that's always been really good is one-on-ones with the finance chair with each of you. And I think it's really important that you guys kind of look through the budget and maybe have some conversations if you need to with Dr. Standish. She can update you on where we are. The finance committee can delve into your comments on what do you think we should do? How should we deal with it? If you have to make choices, what choices would you personally want us to look at? And what would be the impact of those choices? Because sometimes it's easy just to say to cut this off here. Well, what happens if we do it? So I think we need to have those conversations. So if you wouldn't mind getting with April this week and see if we can set up some times for some one-on-ones with each of you and me and probably Dr. Standish, that would be awesome.
I like that idea.
And we'll get the budget calendar out ASAP. So,
All right, thanks for the report, Steve. Next, that brings us to the monthly financial report. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, that brings us to announcements of upcoming events. And we have a lot going on. So on January 25th, tomorrow is the Strategic Planning Community Study Team meeting that Lanny was talking about. That'll be here at 4:30. On January 27th, the NSBA Advocacy Institute in Washington, D.C. I know Lanny is going wearing his NASB leadership hat, and then Connie and I will be there representing LPS. On February 1st, we have the Chamber Coffee at the Chamber office, and then that afternoon, we have another meeting of the Strategic Planning Community Study Team meeting at 4:30 here. February the 8th is the Career Academy Joint Board meeting at 8 a.m. that Lanny mentioned. For lunch that same day, we'll be Face the Chamber with Mayor Beitler at the Country Club at noon. And then that afternoon, another Strategic Planning Community Study Team meeting at 4:30 here at LPSDO. And that brings us to our next board meeting here on February 14th. Next is public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board? Seeing none, there is no request from staff for a closed session. There is no ESU 18 meeting, therefore we stand adjourned.